number 368 in your book, Higher Ground. I'm pressing on the upward way, new heights I'm gaining every day, still praying as I'm onward bound. Lord, plant my feet on higher ground. Lord, lift me up and let me stand by faith on heaven's tableland, a higher plane than I have found. Lord, plant my feet on higher ground. My heart has no desire to stay where doubts arise and fears dismay. Though some may dwell where these abound, my prayer, my aim is higher ground. Lord, lift me up and let me stand by faith on heaven's tableland, a higher plane than I have found. Lord, plant my feet on higher ground. I want to scale the utmost height and catch a gleam of glory bright, but still I'll pray till heaven I found. Lord, lead me on to higher ground. Lord, lift me up and let me stand by faith on heaven's tableland, a higher plane than I have found. Lord, plant my feet on higher ground. All right, the next one is number 145, Take My Life and Let It Be. Take my life and let it be consecrated, Lord, to Thee. Take my hands and let them move at the impulse of Thy love, at the impulse of Thy love. Take my feet and let them be swift and beautiful for Thee. Take my voice and let me sing, always only for my King, always only for my King. On the last. Take my love, my God, I pour at Thy feet its treasure store. Take myself and I will be ever only all for Thee, ever only all for Thee. Good singing this evening. You may be seated. I mentioned Brother Stephen was out of town, but we've got the Blahas and the Hodges that are both out of town as well. I think the Blahas might be coming back today, I think. Yeah. Okay, so they're coming home from Tennessee, I believe, and so keep them in your prayers. I think the Hodges went up to West Virginia. And if you got a bulletin on your way in, hopefully you did. It's got the ladies' meeting that will happen here on Friday evening at 7 o'clock in the basement. And then also our quarterly business meeting will be next Sunday night after the evening service. We'll have a brief meeting there to go over this past quarter. And then we will also have our, man, I thought I had it in my mind what the next thing was. Oh, the sign-up sheet for our outreach times is out there, and this will be probably the last week that it'll be out there. So we're going out on Tuesdays at 6:15 and Saturdays at 10 o'clock. And so if you're able to come at those times, or if you can't come to any of those times, but you'd like to have a map or some visits given to you so you can go out at your own convenience, you could sign up for that, and that'll be fine. But even if you haven't signed up, maybe your schedule changes and you're able to do so, at some point through the next year, then just go ahead and come on at 6:15 on Tuesdays and at 10 on Saturdays. Now, Tuesdays will probably, once time change hits, we'll probably have to just do Saturdays, because Tuesday evening at 6:15 is going to already be dark, and we don't really want to be going to people's houses when it's dark. So, but for now, we'll have that, and we'll probably start it back up on Tuesday sometime in the spring or maybe late winter. Just depends on that. So, but hopefully, if those times work out for you, come on out, and we'll do our part for the Great Commission. And those who can't go out, if you're not able to do something like that, be in prayer during those times. Try to maybe note those times on your schedule for the day, and maybe take a few minutes in prayer for us that are able to go out, and pray that God will bless our efforts there. I think that's it in way of announcements, other than make sure to be checking the screens for and look at the missionaries that we have coming, the Kozinchenkos and the Yankanas, and their needs. I think the Yankanas are asking for some barrels for shipping to Guyana, and the cost for a barrel to ship and for the contents of it, I think we're about $350 a piece or so. I think his really he told me from $320 to $370, and I figured I'd just hit in the middle, $350. And so if you're able to help, or maybe get in with somebody and meet that need, I don't know how many barrels he necessarily needs, but probably a lot. And then gas cards and restaurant cards are always great for missionaries as they're traveling around. And hopefully the Yankanas can stay on schedule for March of 2025, and hopefully we are able to take them on for support as well. Turn in your hymnals to number 117, or you can just look at from the screen, but Draw Me Near, and then we'll get into our study of the book of Revelation. I am thine, O Lord, I have heard thy voice, and it told thy love to me. But I long to rise in the arms of faith and be closer drawn to thee. Draw me nearer, nearer, blessed Lord, to the cross where thou hast died. Draw me nearer, 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 blessed Lord, to thy blessed breeding side. Consecrate me now to thy service, Lord, by the power of grace divine. Let my soul look up with a steadfast hope, and my will be lost in thine. Draw me nearer, nearer, blessed Lord, to the cross where thou hast died. Draw me nearer, 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 blessed Lord, to thy precious bleeding side. On the last. There are depths of love that I cannot know till I cross the narrow sea. There are heights of joy that I may not reach till I rest in peace with thee. Draw me nearer, nearer, blessed Lord, to the cross where thou hast died. Draw me nearer, 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 blessed Lord, to thy precious bleeding side. Amen. Well, turn in your Bibles to Revelation chapter 13. Revelation 13. And last chapter we began the setting up of the scene of the final half of the tribulation period. And we were introduced to to several different characters. We first saw the woman in travail, who is, of course, Israel, that we talked about there. And then we discussed the dragon that persecutes that woman, and that is Satan. Then we talked about the woman's child, which is Christ. And then we see the battle that is in heaven and the casting out of Satan onto this earth. And then the attack that this dragon makes upon the woman or Israel that is brought to naught by God. And so that's what we talked about last week. And the chapter that we'll talk about this evening, chapter 13, will kind of continue that set up. And many scholars believe we are introduced to 7 different characters in these 2 chapters. So, we have the seven trumpet judgments, you have the 7 vial trumpets, and you have the 7 seal trumpets. And then in the middle of that, many would say we have 7 characters that we're introduced to. And those characters would be the woman, the dragon, the woman's child, Michael, the archangel, and then the 144,000, which are represented by the remnant toward the end of that chapter. And then we're introduced to 2. In this chapter, the 2 beasts, which are the Antichrist and the false prophet. And so this is a well-known chapter of Revelation, but it's also often a misunderstood one. And before we get into this passage, let's examine some passages that refer to the Antichrist. And so we're going to kind of hop around a little bit in our Bibles. A good thing to maybe look at this week is to kind of refresh your memory is Daniel chapter number 7 and that talk, that vision that Daniel has about the Antichrist, and it is going to be talked about much in our study this evening. But turn in your Bibles, if you would, to 1 John chapter number 2, and we're going to look at the spirit and the namesake of the Antichrist. Because there will be some that would claim that this beast is the resurrected Roman Empire. And although I believe, and we talked about this a lot in our study of Daniel, I believe that the resurrected Roman Empire will happen during the end times. But that's not the beast. The beast is the one that's in charge of that. It's an actual person. And so, but there is, where they get that from is some of these passages that we'll look at this evening, because there is a spirit of the Antichrist, and there are, as the Bible says, many Antichrists. We talked about this, I believe we did, at least, in our study of the book of Daniel, how that phrase, many Antichrists, is given to us in the book of John, that the devil is not all-knowing. He does not know the time of the end, just like you and I don't know the time of the end. And so he is constantly setting up this world and the stage of this world in order to be able to have somebody in place to fulfill that role. And so maybe recognize that. But also, the spirit of the Antichrist is anyone or anything that is against Christ. That's clear from the meaning, as well as clear from the passages we'll read. Look at verse number 18 of John chapter number 2. It says, "Little children, it is the last time, and as ye have heard that Antichrist shall come, even now are there many Antichrists, whereby we know that it is the last time." All throughout history, people have been looking to and laying claim to people who were the Antichrist. Even in the time of the early church, Caligula actually set up a statue in the temple before it was destroyed. And so many believed at that time that he was going to be the Antichrist. And the Antichrist will do that. And many also believed Nero was the Antichrist when he started persecuting the church at such an alarming rate and alarming way. And they actually called him the beast. And, I'm sure many of you have heard throughout time that different people would likely be the Antichrist. Hitler would have been someone that the church would have looked at as the Antichrist. I've heard many people talk about, or many scholars talk about, Henry Kissinger coming up through the past 50 years or so, of somebody who might have been looked at as the Antichrist. And many, many other people that others have tried to say, okay, this is the Antichrist to come. And the Bible tells us that there are many Antichrists. There are many people who are against Christ, have the same spirit, or maybe set up by Satan in order to potentially move into that spot should the time come. But also look at 1 John 4. starting in verse number 1. It says, "Beloved, believe not every spirit, but try the spirits whether they are of God, because many false prophets are gone out into the world. Hereby know ye the Spirit of God. Every spirit that confesseth that Jesus Christ is come in the flesh is of God. Every spirit that confesseth not that Jesus Christ is come in the flesh is not of God. And this is the spirit of Antichrist, whereof ye have heard that it should come, and even now already it is in the world." So may we recognize that the spirit of the Antichrist is both here now, but it is also to come. So that may we recognize that there is a spirit, but there's also a person. And then verse number 4 says, "Ye are of God, little children, have overcome them, because greater is he that is in you than he that is in the world." And now turn to 2 John. Look there. In verse number 7. It says, "For many deceivers are entered into the world, who confess not that Jesus Christ is come in the flesh. This is a deceiver and an antichrist." And so may we recognize that the devil has set up this spirit. He's set up people. And there are many people who preach and teach a religion that is not Christ and does not claim Christ as having lived and having been the Son of God and having died for your and I's sins and having resurrected from the grave. And those are people who are against Christ. They're anti-Christ. In Matthew chapter number 24, verse number 24 says, "For there shall arise false Christs and false prophets, and shall show great signs and wonders, insomuch that if it were possible, they shall deceive the very elect." And so false prophets, false teachers, false Christ, they're happening today. But when we get to Revelation 13, we are talking about a specific individual, a false Christ, an antichrist. And we're talking about a specific individual, secondly, that second beast, the false prophet. And so there have always been false Christs and false prophets throughout time. But when we get to Revelation, we're talking about that. We're talking about specific people there. And then we can see the plan of the Antichrist. In Daniel chapter number 9, verse 27, it says, "And he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week. And in the midst of the week he shall cause the sacrifice and the oblation to cease. And for the overspreading of abominations he shall make it desolate, even until the consummation, and that determined shall be poured upon the desolate." So we've talked a lot about how when the Antichrist comes, he's that horseman, that first horseman, that rider of peace. And he is going to offer peace to this world. He's going to offer peace to Jerusalem. He's going to bring back the temple and allow the nation of Israel to continue the sacrifice. But he's only going to allow that to happen for 3.5 years. And after that 3.5 years, he's going to show his true colors. He's going to roll his idol into the temple and set up his religion and all of those things for the next 3.5 years. And so that is his plan. And we see in Revelation 6:2, that is where he's presented as that white horse. And while I'm reading that, turn in your Bibles to 2 Thessalonians chapter number 2. But in Revelation 6:2, he says, "And I saw and behold a white horse, and he that sat on him had a bow, and a crown was given unto him, and he went forth conquering and to conquer." Or we talked about how he has a bow, but he has no arrows. He's going to conquer this world through diplomacy and through an offering of peace. But look at 2 Thessalonians chapter number 2, and we're going to read the first 11 verses to this chapter. And it tells us much about the Antichrist that we will refer back to many times through our study this evening. It says, "Now we beseech you, brethren, by the coming of our Lord Jesus Christ, and by our gathering together unto him, that ye be not soon shaken in mind, or be troubled, neither by spirit, nor by word, nor by letter, as from us, as that the day of Christ is at hand. Let no man deceive you by any means, for that day shall not come, except there come a falling away first. That man of sin be revealed, the son of perdition, who opposeth and exalteth himself above all that is called God, or that is worshipped, so that he as God sitteth in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God. Remember ye not that when I was yet with you, I told you these things. And now ye know what withholdeth, that he might be revealed in his time, for the mystery of iniquity doth already work. Only he who now letteth will let, until he be taken out of the way. And then shall that wicked be revealed, whom the Lord shall consume with the spirit of his mouth, and shall destroy with the brightness of his coming, even him whose coming is after the working of Satan with all power and signs and lying wonders, and with all deceivableness and of unrighteousness in them that perish, because they received not the love of the truth, that they might be saved. And for this cause God shall send them strong delusion, that they should believe a lie, that all they might be damned who believed not the truth, but had pleasure in unrighteousness. And so we see here the plan of the Antichrist, but we also see the deception. And you look back at verse number 9, we see that he is going to deceive people through power and signs and lying wonders. And then verse 10, and all deceivableness. Out of the 91 occurrences in the New Testament of words that mean to deceive or to go astray, 22 of them refer directly to the Antichrist. That's a pretty good portion. He's going to be a very deceptive person. And as we get to, especially when we get to verse number 18, that talks about let them that understand, maybe we recognize that I don't believe that's for us to understand. I believe that's talking to those living during these times. And we'll get to that when I don't want to get too ahead of myself, which I probably already did. But look back to Revelation chapter number 13. So we'll get into this. Now that we kind of have a groundwork for who the Antichrist is, what his plan is going to be, the way that he's going to enact that plan through deception, let's get into this chapter that speaks much about him. It says, and I stood upon the sand of the sea and saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his heads the name of blasphemy. And the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard, and his feet were as the feet of a bear, and his mouth as the mouth of a lion. And the dragon gave him his power and his seat and great authority. And I saw one of his heads as it were wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed, and all the world wondered after the beast. And they worshipped the dragon which gave power unto the beast. And they and they worshipped the beast, saying, who is like unto the beast? Who is able to make war with him? There was given unto him a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies, and power was given unto him to continue 42 months. And he opened his mouth in blasphemy against God, to blaspheme his name and his tabernacle and them that dwell in heaven. And it was given unto him to make war with the saints and to overcome them, and power was given him over all kindreds and tongues and nations. And all that dwell upon the earth shall worship him, whose names are not written in the book of life of the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world. If any man have an ear, let him hear. He that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity, and he that killeth with the sword must be killed with the sword. Here's the patience and the faith of the saints. And I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth. He had 2 horns like a lamb, and he spake as a dragon, and he exerciseth all the power of the first beast before him, and causeth the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed. And he doeth great wonders, that he maketh fire come down from heaven on the earth in the sight of men, and he deceiveth them that dwell on the earth by the means of those miracles which he had power to do in the sight of the beast, saying to them that dwell on the earth, that they should make an image to the beast, which had the wound by a sword and did live. He had power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. And he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads, and that no man might buy or sell save he that had the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. Here is wisdom. Let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666. And so here we're given an introduction to 2 beasts. And so first we'll talk about the first beast, and this beast comes forth out of the sea. And the sea symbolizes 2 things in Scripture. It symbolizes nations. We see that from Revelation chapter 17, verse number 15. And he saith unto me, the waters which thou sawest, where the horse sitteth, are peoples and multitudes and nations and tongues. And so the Revelation 17 explains much of the symbolism that we see in this chapter. And in that chapter we see that the sea comes out of the nations. And many believe those are speaking specifically of the Gentile nations. And I believe that this is what that symbolizes. But some would also say that it symbolizes the wicked. What both of these can be true at the same time. Maybe recognize that the nations of this world, ours included, have wickedness in them and are wicked. Isaiah chapter 57, verse number 20 says, "But the wicked are like the troubled sea, when it cannot rest, whose waters cast up mire and dirt." And the Greek term for beast used here is the word therion, which means wild, venomous beast, a monster. It's a wild beast. This is going to be a dangerous man that arises forth into this world. And this beast has 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his heads the name of blasphemy. And the 7 horns, the 10 horns, and the 10 crowns, heads are often seen as rulers, and horns, we've talked about before, are seen as power. And many believe that these 7 heads are 7 kings of Rome. And the first 6, and when you go to Revelation chapter 17, verse number 5, it kind of explains it. It says, "And here is the mind which hath wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sitteth. And there are 7 kings, 5 are fallen, and 1 is, and 1 is yet to come." So speaking and referring to 5 kings who have gone before, 1 king who is in place now, and 1 who is yet to come, which would be the Antichrist. And then it says, "And when he cometh, he must continue a short space." So 7 kings who have gone before, who maybe have had a part in the persecution of Israel, or whatever the case may be. But that's, I think, where we get these 7 heads from, a representation of 7 kings. And then the 10 horns being a representation of this revived Roman Empire that we talked about when we were in Daniel chapter number 2. And we had that image that Nebuchadnezzar dreamed of. And he was the golden head, and below him were the brass arms, and the thighs, and the feet. And the feet was Rome, and the toes were both of iron and clay. You remember that? And there were 10 toes on that feet. And then after that was to come a kingdom like a mountain that was going to break up. And that was a picture and representation of Christ. And so he talked about that the Roman Empire would have a conglomeration of 10 different kingdoms. And it's very easy to kind of equate the European Union with that. And we could talk more and more about that to come. But also in Revelation 17:12-13, it says, "And the 10 horns which thou sawest are 10 kings, which have received no kingdom as yet, but receive power as kings 1 hour with the beast. These have one mind, and shall give their power and strength unto the beast." And so this beast of Daniel 7, it also had 10 horns, and so did the Nebuchadnezzar's vision. And like I said, that's the revived Roman Empire, which has been tried by many people to be revived all throughout history. The Third Reich that Hitler, of course, tried to bring about. What that was the third rendition of the Roman Empire. That's what it was, or what he attempted to do anyway. But there's been more than just him, and more than just the other 2 that had tried to revive that. And the beast that is in this passage is the little horn of Daniel chapter number 7 that arises out of those 10 horns of the beast there. And we're not going to go back to Daniel 7, but like I said, it would be maybe a good passage for you to kind of look at this week and kind of recall what we had studied there in that passage. But I wish we had time this evening, but I really would like to get through this chapter. And then it says, "Upon his heads the name of blasphemy." And blasphemy is both an imitation of God, someone trying to make themselves like God, and also someone mocking God, which this beast, this Antichrist, is going to do both very blatantly. And then we see in verse number 2, we see a description of the beast. "And the beast," verse number 2, "which I saw was like unto a leopard, and his feet were as the feet of a bear, and his mouth as the mouth of a lion. And the dragon gave him his power and his seat and great authority." And so also, to go back to Daniel chapter number 7, we're presented with 4 beasts there. And the first beast is Nebuchadnezzar. He's a lion. And then there is the Medes and the Persians. They're the bear. And then there is leopard that is Greece. And we're given these in reverse order here, because Daniel is looking forward. So he is seeing it Babylon, Medes and Persians, Greece. Whereas John is looking back, so he sees Greece and Medes and Persians and Babylon. But what this is saying here is this guy is going to have all the characteristics of these former kingdoms and in him. And we kind of talked about how the lion is a symbol of power and of might, and how Nebuchadnezzar ruled his kingdom with such great authority. Remember that? And then the Medes and the Persians, they were a massive kingdom. They were huge like a bear, and they had a great amount of strength, but they were kind of slow and methodical. And they were bound by their own laws. You know, twice we're given stories of a king that makes a law and then backtracks and realizes, man, I shouldn't have made that law, and now he can't change it. And then the kingdom of Greece, represented by Alexander the Great, and you know, we talked about him and a lot during those passages, and how it's very clear that it's Alexander the Great. And what is Alexander the Great most known for? His swiftness in his ability to conquer the earth. And so this man is going to come. He's going to have all of that. He's going to have great authority. He's going to have a huge amount of power, and the size of the kingdom that he will rule will be great because it's the whole world. And he's going to do this quickly. He's going to swoop into this world and conquer it through diplomacy, and people are going to be lining up to let him rule over them at a very fast rate. And then notice at the very end, his teeth are not mentioned, but his mouth is. Kind of, to me, shows that his bark is worse than his bite. He's not going to conquer this world through war and through a show of power, but he's going to conquer it through his words. And you look at how people have been put into power, especially today, is not by shows of power, but by their words. And it's oftentimes the best speaker becomes the leader. And the one who can see, he can handle his words the best becomes whoever wins the debate or wins this or that is the one who becomes the ruler. And then verse number 3, we're shown his wound. And this wound is an important thing. Look at what it says. And I saw one of his heads as it were wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed, and all of the world wondered after the beast. And this wound is mentioned 3 times in this chapter, and in verse number 14, we're told that this wound is given by a sword. Now, whether that's a physical sword or some kind of weapon, whatever the case may be, this wound is going to cause wonder that is going to lead to worship through the efforts of the second beast, as we'll get to in a little bit. But as we are kind of at the middle point of talking about this beast, I want us to see throughout this rest of this passage the characteristics of the Antichrist. Here's how the Antichrist is going to be known and how we're going to be able to see him. First of all, by his world dominance. And we see that, by his wickedness. And we see that from verse number 1, his blasphemy. And 2 Thessalonians chapter number 2, verse number 3 says that there's going to come a falling away first. And it says, "And that man of sin be revealed, the son of perdition." He's going to be a wicked person. Verse number 8 goes on to say, "And then shall that wicked," capitalized, "be revealed." In Matthew chapter 24, verse number 15, it says, "When ye therefore shall see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet stand in the holy place, whoso readeth, let him understand." And who sets up that abomination of desolation? The Antichrist does. He's going to be a wicked person. He's going to be known by his wickedness, but also he's going to be known by his world dominance. Look at verse number 2. It talks about how he has his power and his seat and great authority. And this authority and this power and this seat is going to be given to him by none other than the dragon. In fact, many people actually believe that the one that the "and I" should be "and he" because they don't see a separation between verse 17 of chapter number 12 and verse number 1 of chapter number 13. I don't know if it's Satan that saw this or whether it's John. I don't know. I don't know Greek well enough to probably debate that even. But maybe we understand that the Bible is inspired, but the divisions are put in there for us about 50, 60 years ago in order for us to better read our Bibles. Or actually, not 500 or 600 years ago, excuse me. In order for us to better read the Bible. So these verses, these chapters are connected in a great way. But anyway, all that to say, he's going to be known by his world dominance that's going to be given to him by the dragon. And just about everything that he has is going to be given to him by Satan. And then that world dominance is going to lead to wonder. And that wonder is going to be given to him by the wound that he received. And we see that in verse number 3. And all the world wonders at the beast. And wonder is the doorway to worship. And this wound that causes the wonder is going to lead to worship, just like we said. And verse number 4 shows us the worship. The worship, the fourth thing that he is going to be identified by and in the characteristics that we're going to see from him. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse number 4 says, who opposeth and exalteth himself above all that is called God or that is worshipped, so that he as God sitteth in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God. And Satan has always desired worship. He always has. In fact, we could turn our Bibles to Matthew chapter 4 and see where he tempts Jesus Christ with the kingdoms of this earth if all Jesus would do is to bow down and worship him. Satan's always desired worship. And can I tell you, he's kind of always had it. There's always been people who have worshiped the devil, whether they recognized that they were or not, they have. But here he's going to receive that worship in a way that he never has before. So much so that the phrase here at the end of verse number 4, who is like unto the beast, I can't help but think of the phrase that's used so often in the Old Testament to refer to God that says, who is like our God? It's given at least 4 times in the Old Testament. That people in the Old Testament looked at God and his might and his wonder that he showed them and said, who is like him? And yet that's what we're going to be saying about the beast one day, the Antichrist, during the time of the tribulation. And then he's going to be also known by his words. Look at verse number 5 and 6. And there was given unto him a mouth, speaking great things and blasphemies, and power was given to him to continue 40 and 2 months. And he opened his mouth and blasphemed against God, to blaspheme his name and his tabernacle and them that dwell in heaven. And look at how the leaders of this world lead today, and they do so through the ears of the masses, and the tongue is a very powerful weapon. If you don't believe that, just go to James 3 and read about it for a little bit. The power that is in the tongue is an incredible thing, and that's going to be the power that the Antichrist will wield. He will use his words to enact mighty things. And then lastly, he's going to be known by war. And we see that starting in verse number 7 down to verse number 9. It says, and it was given unto him to make war with the saints and to overcome them. And power was given him over all kindreds and tongues and nations, and all that dwell upon the earth shall worship him, whose names are not written in the book of life, of the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world. If any man have an ear, let him hear. That we see here him making war with the saints and power to overcome them. This is another evidence in Daniel 7:25. Well, let me read that for you too before I get too far. It says, and he shall speak great words against the Most High and shall wear out the saints of the Most High and think to change times and laws, and they shall be given in his hand until time and times and the dividing of time. He's going to wear them out. He's going to overcome them. And so this is another sign, another reason why I don't believe that the church will be around during the time of the tribulation. Why? Because when Jesus Christ established the church and he told Peter about it, what did he say that was not going to happen to the church? He said, the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. But here you have the beast and the dragon being able to overcome the saints. Well, how can that be? Because the church isn't around then. It's not going to be the church. It's going to be those who believe Christ during the time of the tribulation. Ultimately, though, we learned from a couple chapters ago, they're going to ultimately overcome how? By the blood of the Lamb and the power of their testimony. That the worst thing that this beast and the devil can do to the saints of the tribulation period is the same worst that he can do for us. He can kill us and bring us into the presence of Jesus Christ. How bad is that? It's not too bad, really. So although he may seem like he overcomes them, he doesn't really overcome them. But anyway, we see the war. And this verse is a sign to that. And then this man will lead the world. He'll be a world leader. In 1979, a Times article carried the headline, "Inflation, who is hurt the worst?" You might say, well, don't you mean 2024? No, 1979 it said this. And a worried blue-collared worker who was interviewed, named Arthur Garcia, said this, "I keep waiting for a miracle. Some guy who isn't born yet, and when he comes, we'll follow him like he's John the Baptist." And that day's coming. But that guy isn't going to like it. When that guy comes, inflation is going to be the least of the problems that man will experience, or anyone will experience. Here's another scary thing said about people from this world. It's that Henry Spock, who is a spokesman for the Society for Worldwide Interbank Financial Telecommunications in Brussels, Belgium, which is also the headquarters for the EU. He said this, "We do not want another committee. We have too many already. What we want is a man of sufficient stature to hold the allegiance of the people and lift us out of the economic morass into which we are sinking. Send us such a man, and be he God or the devil, we will accept him." It's a scary thing. So you might say, well, man, how is this guy going to be able to rule the world? No one's ever been able to do that. Through diplomacy, through force, well, we can see how this world is coming to a place where we're saying, man, we just want to relieve so much, we'll give our power to anybody if he'll offer us relief and stability and peace, right? And can I tell you, when you look at the wars that are going on in our world today, I don't remember growing up ever hearing on the news a threat of nuclear war. I grew up post-Cold War, so I didn't grow up during times where nuclear war was talked about. But can I tell you, that's all over the news today. Threats of nuclear war between Ukraine and how it can escalate into that. And can I tell you, that's a scary thing. That's a scary thing. And if that time were to ever come, can I tell you, there are going to be many people in this world who are going to say, man, the horribleness of that, yeah, if somebody's offering peace, I'm signing up for that. There's going to be a lot of people who are going to be blind to things in this world, and they're going to only look for the short-term benefits of some empty promises from somebody, and they'll sign right up. There's a constitution of the Federation of the Earth that was produced by a group called the Democratic World Federalists. They're based out of, they began in, or their base now is in San Francisco, which is where the UN was originally brought about. And the preamble to their constitution says this. It says, "Realizing that humanity today has come to a turning point in history." By the way, this was produced in 1991, from my understanding. It says, "Realizing that humanity today has come to a turning point in history and that we are on the threshold of a new world order which promises to usher in an era of peace, prosperity, justice, and harmony. Aware of the interdependence of people, nations, and all life, aware that man's abuse of science and technology has brought humanity to the brink of disaster through the production of horrendous weaponry of mass destruction and to the brink of ecological and social catastrophe. Aware that the traditional concept of security through military defense is a total illusion both for the present and for the future. Aware of the misery and conflicts caused by ever-increasing disparity between rich and poor. Conscious of our obligation to posterity to save humanity from imminent and total annihilation. Conscious that humanity is one despite the existence of diverse nations, races, creeds, ideologies, and cultures, and that the principle of unity in diversity is the basis for a new age when war shall be outlawed and peace prevail, when the earth's total resources shall be equitably used for human welfare, and when basic human rights and responsibilities shall be shared by all without discrimination. Conscious of the inescapable reality that the greatest hope for the survival of life on earth is the establishment of a democratic world government. We, citizens of the world, hereby resolve to establish a world federation to be governed in accordance with this Constitution for the Federation of Earth. That's a scary document. Why? Because it's saying, hey, we need to, for the cause of mankind, eliminate all borders and all governments and all differences and have one world government. What is that going to be? That's going to be the end times. That's going to happen during the time of the tribulation. And may we recognize that this movement is happening in our world probably more than it ever has, which is likely because we are closer to Jesus' arrival than any other person, because here we are. We're in the present. And so may this not surprise us, and may we recognize some of the things that they're talking about there. They're talking about societal collapse. They're talking about economic collapse. They're talking about equity and all of those types of things, and safety. And they're using all of these things and using social justice catchphrases in order to discuss these types of things. And may we recognize what this world is coming to. You might say, well, what is the agenda of all these different things going on today? Well, the agenda is toward a one world government. It for sure is. And I don't want to get political or anything like that. That's not my goal today, but may we be informed. Because there's three types of people here on this earth, okay? There's people who are scared, right? There's people who see everything as something we should be scared of. Nuclear war, man, we need to be scared about that. Climate change, we need to be scared about that. This thing over here, we need to be scared about that. And inflation, and there's people who are scared. And then there's people who are so distracted they're not scared, right? They're too busy taking selfies and making TikTok videos, and they're doing all kinds of crazy stuff, and they don't know what in the world's going on, right? And then there's Christians who are informed. But we can see the things that we could be scared of, but we recognize that my faith is not in a government. My faith is not in some environmental committee. My faith is not in the laws that are passed at Congress. My faith is in Jesus Christ and in God. And I don't need to be worried about any of those things, but I do need to recognize what's going on in the system of this world. And that we're coming to a point very soon, potentially, where these events will unfold. And you and I's opportunity to witness for the Lord will be gone. Why? Because we're going to be out of here. And there's going to be a lot of people left here on this earth that are going to have to experience these things. And may we be faithful to tell them today while there's time. We got 12 minutes to get through the rest of this chapter. The second beast, okay? Second beast. Who is he? His identity. Well, look at verse number 11. It says, I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had two horns like a lamb, and he spake as a dragon. This second beast, his identity is shown to us in Revelation 16, where it talks about, and I saw three unclean spirits like frogs come out of the mouth of the dragon, and out of the mouth of the beast, and out of the mouth of the false prophet. 19:20 of Revelation says, and the beast was taken, and with him the false prophet that wrought miracles before him, with which he deceived them that had received the mark of the beast, and them that had worshipped his image. Revelation 20:10 says, and the devil that deceived them was cast in a lake of fire and brimstone, where the beast and the false prophet are. So this second beast is the false prophet. And what's being set up here is a false trinity, okay? You've got Satan the dragon, that is a representation of God the Father. You've got the Antichrist, this first beast, who is a representation of God the Son. And you've got the false prophet, a representation of the Holy Spirit. And what does Jesus Christ do while he's on the earth? He points people to God. And what does the Holy Spirit do? He points people to Christ. And that's what we see happening here in this story as well. That the devil is trying to imitate God. He's trying to become like God. And so, of course, he would bring about his own trinity of people in order to accomplish that and to imitate him. And that's what's happening here. And that's what we're introduced here in this chapter. And notice that he comes up out of the earth. And you know, I don't know if there's much significance in this or not, but the land in the Bible is often referred to, and in reference to, I should say, to the nation of Israel. And so many people believe that the false prophet will be a Jew. in order to do some of the things that he's able to do. And I'm not sure about that. Maybe not. But he does have two horns like a lamb. Notice that in verse number 11. And he had two horns like a lamb. That he's going to have power, but he presents himself as a lamb. And he speaks as a dragon. Now, he looks and he imitates Christ in how he seems, but when he opens his mouth, Satan comes out. And then we see the characteristics of the false prophet through these passages. First of all, the first characteristic I see is an authoritative stand in verse number 11. And then verse number 12, I see an apostate system. He's going to set up a system of apostasy and a false religion. And we see that in Matthew 24:5. It says, "For many shall come in my name, saying, I am Christ, and shall deceive many." Verse number 11 of 24 of Matthew 24 says, "And many false prophets shall rise, and shall deceive many." 24 of Matthew says, "For there shall arise false Christs and false prophets, and show great signs and wonders, insomuch that if it were possible, they shall deceive the very elect." And may we begin to recognize this system and keep our eyes out for those who are helping to establish it. We keep our eyes open. The Bible tells us that there's all kinds of false prophets out there, and may we open our eyes to these types of things. And something that kind of scares me, and maybe I'm being a little bit too skeptical, but recently there's been a lot of celebrities and big-name people who have come out as Christians. And I hope that they are truly Christians. But, I'm kind of skeptical. I'm kind of stepping back and wondering, okay, are these people presenting this, but they're not really believers and followers in Christ? I don't know. But we are to be skeptical. The Bible tells us to be. That there's all kinds of people out there trying to trick us. And they're going to be so deceptive, they're even, as if they could, deceive the very elect, us. And so may we be careful. And may we try the spirits and try the prophets. Now, how do we know? Do they preach Christ and Him crucified and resurrected? And then authenticating signs. We see that in verse 13 and 14. Mark 13:22 says, "For false Christs and false prophets shall rise and shall show signs and wonders to seduce, if it were possible, even the elect." And then 2 Thessalonians 2:9 says, "Even him whose coming is after the working of Satan with all power and signs and lying wonders." And that's what we see here in verse 13 and 14. He's going to have great wonders, and he's going to make fire come down from heaven on the earth in the sight of men. That's typically something that God does. What was the sign when Elijah went forth to the prophets of Baal? What was the sign? That fire would fall down from heaven. And this false prophet is going to be able to do that. And verse 14, "And deceiveth them that dwell on the earth by the means of those miracles which he had power to do in the sight of the beast, saying to them that dwell on the earth that they should make an image to the beast which had the wound by a sword and did live." And so I don't know, some people believe that the Antichrist, the beast, is actually going to die from this wound, and he's going to be resurrected. I think it's going to be a false death and a false resurrection, because I don't think the devil has power to give life. But it's going to look like he is going to be risen from the dead. And this false prophet is going to make a display of that and is going to use that event in order to bring about worship of the beast. And then verse 15, we see an animated statue. It says, "And he had power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed." And the word used for life in this verse is important. When you look in the Greek, the word used for life in this verse is the word pneuma, which means breath. The word for life, like in the sense of bio, is the word bios. And so we recognize that he's not actually giving life to this, but he's giving animation to it. He's giving breath to it. He's allowing it to be able to speak. And, we could talk and take guesses as to how that's going to look, but I think the rise of AI in our culture kind of tells us exactly what this is kind of going to be, likely, okay? Something that's able to have conversation, some machine, an image that is going to be able to have conversation and bring about its own things. I remember when AI was first coming out, Megan's uncle, we have a family chat thing, and he sent he somehow got, I don't know if he paid for a subscription to AI or what, but he was typing in Bible verses into AI and having them make sermons. And they weren't bad. Probably better than mine. And they were able to make these types of things. And so you have very easy how we can see this coming to life, but it's going to be in a way that's so incredible that they're going to believe that this thing has life. And then lastly, verse 16 and 17, we see his administrative strategy. It says, "And he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their foreheads, or in their right hands, or in their foreheads, and that no man might buy or sell, save he that had the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name." And so he's going to take this religious system that he has set up, and he is going to bring it into the system of the economy. And he's going to force everyone that wants to be able to live in the normal world have to partake of his religion. And notice it's the false prophet that institutes the system of this mark. I often thought that, it's the mark of the beast, so it's got to be the mark of the Antichrist, and he's the one that's going to orchestrate this, but it's actually the false prophet that does. And he's the one that makes all this happen. It's not through a religion, or it's not through politics, but it's through religion whereby this mark is established. And there's many people, like we've talked about with many of these things, we're living in a day and age where we can see how these things are possible. We're living in a day and age where we can pick up our phones and scan some little image and then we're to a website or we're paying. I go to Walmart, I don't even put a card in anymore. That little picture at the bottom left-hand corner of the Walmart screen, I take a picture of that thing and it pays, and I walk away without a receipt. It's crazy. Every time I do it, I feel like I'm robbing the place. But the money leaves my account, so I'm not really robbing it, but I feel like it kind of. Because nothing exchanged hands. I didn't even put the card in there, And so we can see how this type of system can be enacted very easily. The money that you and I have today is not something sitting under our mattresses. It's numbers on a computer screen for most, if not all of us. Right? It's not actual cash that we have. It's a bank ledger that we can look at. And so it's very easy how we can see these kind of things enacted, whereas people 200 years ago, they had, how in the world is he going to be able to do this? But you can see the necessity to follow this system or face the consequences. And systems like these have I say like these, not exactly like this, but in similar fashions have been set up before. Someone once said this while under the communist rule in Bulgaria. He said this. He said, "You cannot understand, you cannot know the most terrible instrument of persecution ever devised is an innocent ration card. You cannot buy or sell anything except according to that little card. If they please, you can be starved to death. If they please, you can be disposed of, dispossessed of everything you have. You cannot trade, you cannot buy, you cannot sell without it." And so the ration, he's saying that ration card that's given out by the communists, that's not something that's for our benefit, that's for our oppression. But it seems innocent, and so will this, I'm sure. It's going to be a deceptive thing. It's not going to look like a bad thing or seem like a bad thing to those in the world. It's going to be a system, it's likely going to be under the guise of, this is how we can keep our things safe, and under the guise of safety of money. And the last verse is maybe the most well-known verse in the book of Revelation, and we aren't going to spend much time on it, but it says, "Here is wisdom. Let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man. His number is 666. And it says before, it says, in verse 17, it says, "Save he that had the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name." And so the attachment to this number and the name of the beast is very clear. And so what people have tried to do throughout history is take this number and equate it to a name. And the Greek alphabet, each alphabetical symbol also corresponds with a number. And so there's people who, through math, try to figure out all kinds of different ways to figure out the name of the Antichrist. And we could, I'm sure there's dozens and dozens of different ways that people devise this. But here's the thing. This is not given to us for us to try to figure out the name of the Antichrist. I think this is given for people during the time to be able to read this and understand, okay, what this is. Because the deception that this false prophet and this Antichrist is going to be spewing out is going to be something that's going to fool people in a great way. And this, I think, is something for them, not necessarily something for us. We're not supposed to figure out the name, but they need to be able to. They need to be able to recognize this. You and I are not to look out for the Antichrist. I'm not looking for the Antichrist. I'm looking for Jesus Christ and his return, okay? I'm not trying to look for him. I'm trying to look for Christ. And I want to be ready when he comes. I don't need to be ready when the Antichrist comes. I'm going to be gone. But I want to be ready when Christ comes. And I want to be faithful to him until he does. And may you as well. And here, the Antichrist, because it's something that's so pervasive, and here we are, we're coming on another season of horror films that are coming out. I don't know what horror films are, but I almost guarantee you that some kind of horror film about the number 666 or the beast or the has come out in the past month or will in the next several days because Halloween's coming up. And so what this world has kind of conditioned us for is to see the Antichrist as some kind of boogeyman that's equatable with Santa Claus or the Tooth Fairy, some mystical, mythic creature. He's not really real. No, he is. He's going to come, and he's going to have great power. He's going to have all these things that are discussed here. But we don't need to worry about any of that. We don't be looking for him. We be looking for Christ. May we not get so concerned about the who and the when and that we miss the what God is trying to teach us here. The what is that the time is approaching. Paul, when he wrote that book, the Thessalonians, he believed in the imminent return of Jesus Christ. In other words, he thought it could happen any moment. In the time of Paul, almost 2,000 years ago. If he thought that, how much more should we?